Tim Spells is going to be introducing what Oasys is. So, Tim, why don't you take it away?
Okay, thank you. Well, thanks for attending today. I just want to briefly tell you a little bit about on Systex and who we are, and just a few other products and our strategy before handing you back to Rick. Our mission is really to extend the life of multi-value applications. We've been very successful in working with organizations that have looked at replacing their applications by looking to re-engineer in .NET, or, for example, replacing it with an SAP solution, Oracle solution, etc. And we've been very successful in really saving the multi-value application and extending it to be able to integrate with more mainstream standards in the marketplace. So, for example, we believe or think that multi-value applications should be able to run with a browser interface. We believe that multi-value applications should be able to run on other databases, for example, relational databases such as Oracle and SQL. We've done a lot of work over the years in that area. So really our competition is either rewrite the application or replace it. So we believe we have a clear vision of the multi-value marketplace. It's the third largest legacy market next to IBM and DEC. The main issue with multi-value is it's become a lot more isolated over the years, and the amount of investment that we believe is being plowed into the multi-value marketplace in comparison to the SQL market, $4 billion a year in SQL, and we estimate maybe $10 million a year into the multi-value technologies. Its strength is really, we believe, it's in its business rules, and its business rules is what we are looking to expose with other so-called mainstream technologies. And we do it in a, we provide a strategy that an organization can take very small steps towards their IT objectives. It's certainly not a revolutionary strategy, and the way that we've kind of won business in the past is really by minimizing an organization's risk in terms of looking to meet their objectives in becoming a little bit more independent from the multi-value technology. So today's session, webinar, is we're going to be focused on web enablement. We're going to go through, and Rick is going to demonstrate really Oasys Web and what that is. And really what it is a very fast way to be able to integrate your multi-value applications to the web. We've been very successful in the past in being able to split the application logic from the data within multi-value. Oasys Web strategy will demonstrate how we can actually separate the user interface from the application logic, and the user interface being a browser interface, being able to run on any workstations, mobile devices, run it on your iPhone, etc. A couple of weeks ago, some of you might have been on the webinar, but we presented Oasys Omni. And what Oasys Omni is, it gives you the ability to reuse your multi-value business processes within mainstream technologies. What it does is it actually creates services within BASIC, so you can actually start running your multi-value application processes as a service. Oasys Bridge in the left-hand corner, that is really a bridge between your multi-value database, like, for example, Universe Unidata D3, etc., and SQL databases. And what it does is it allows us to synchronize your multi-value data with the SQL data, so it really replicates the data, And we've, over the years, made major investments into the mapping and normalization piece. So all your data is fully normalized in SQL, and Oasys Bridge keeps the two in sync. So, for example, you could select 30, 40, 50 files on the MultiValue side, and Oasys Bridge will just keep those 30 files in sync between, for example, Universe and SQL. And then Oasys Server allows us to be able to run all your programs, and so you can start running your programs and also your data, for example, in the relational world. So really what we're doing all the way through is we're really keeping the application logic intact, but throughout all the technologies and strategies that we have, it allows us to be able to provide a lot more independence, and we believe increase the value of the multi-value applications considerably. So I want to just hand you back to Rick now, but we do have a full modernization strategy that, if anyone's interested, we can take you through that at a later time. But I'm going to hand you back to Rick to take you through Oasys Web.
Okay, thank you, Tim. I am going to show my PowerPoint. Okay, so what Oasys Web allows you to do is basically enable your current applications that are running in green screen and enable them to run in a browser environment. Real quick, if anybody has any questions, there is a questions control on the webinar panel. So if you have any questions, please enter your question there. I'll constantly look at it and answer them as I see them. Okay, thanks. So let's back up. So it allows you to enable your green screen applications in a browser environment. It is completely compatible. You just simply go and run. It's a first it's an HTML, pure HTML in any browser. It's directly out of the box. Zero client-side software, so you don't need to install anything on the client side, which allows you to run in any browser, on any device, and if you can access your web server at your business web server, you can access it from anywhere. It can be cloud-based, data center, or local host. Supports visualization, centralized strategies. You could do macros. You can do a lot of the escape sequences. They're in things like Wintegrate and AccuTerm, and it handles all of that. So the first thing you do is enable. Once you're satisfied with enabling your application, you can move on to the next piece of the application, which is enhance. So basically, you can take your green screens and enhance them into a fully web-based application without touching any back-end business code. So you're basically separating the business layer from your presentation layer without having to do any changing to any code. Completely wizard-driven. Developers do not need to do this. You can have a super user create the web screens. We have plenty of examples on how this was done. So we're going to show one today. Increases performance, reduces errors, and reduces time to market. Then once you have your screens or one screen developed in a GUI environment, we call it the UI, you can then take that screen and evolve it. Through wizard-driven W3C compliant services, you can create a web service based on your screen, and it's basically as easy as just clicking a button to generate it. You can view multiple screens, multiple systems, real-time, high-volume data. It empowers people to look at their data and also allows outside people to call a web service and get their data without having to do any coding. Once the screens are developed, it's very easy to create a service based on that screen. So real quick, that's what it is. It's enable, enhance, and evolve. Any questions about that before I actually go in and show you what it looks like? Okay, let's move on. That was real quick. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on that. But basically, the enable. I've got Chrome running here, and it's simply in this case, a telnet connection back to the host. You can use telnet, SSH. You can have a you can have an SSH server connected, so it can connect via SSH, and you can also use SSL. So your SSL certificate is installed on the web server, and it's basically a pass-through. So you can secure your data through web technologies very easily. You can even set up a VPN if you want to make sure that everything is secure and you want to go through a VPN tunnel. You can do that also. So simple as logging in. Oh, I didn't want to log into there, but I'll just to Kubernetes. Wanted to log to a different account, which would have brought this menu up directly. This is an application a very small piece of an application that we did for one of our clients in Texas. It's a product entry screen, green screen, telnet application. You put in a product code. DST, I think it is. Enter the information, displays the screen. It's got multiple screens, so you can change. First, you could change a line by doing a C, and it actually prompts you through that. Let's get out of there. I should have changed just one, but that's okay. And we'll go through it. There's multiple screens that are involved with this. Okay, you could change a line by simply just entering the line number. You've all seen all of this. The vendor has a specific screen that's attached to it, so there are screens behind this. So if I hit a 5, it goes to a vendor screen. So these are alternate vendors that can be used. If I go and click on enter a 1 and enter, it shows the vendor, all the vendor data for that product and the costs and the sizes, cases, and everything else on that for that vendor. You can also move vendors up and down. So if I type an M and I say I want to move line 1 to line 2, and basically what this is saying that line 1 is our vendor of preference. And I'll leave that there. I'll end out of this. So you can see there's multiple screens here. I think in the unit 8, if I do a question mark, it brings up a code listing. So then I can pick the code and bring it back. So there's a few of those that are related there. And it's just simply a browser environment. Now, what's pretty interesting about this is, and I'm just going to bring up the developer tools for Chrome. Okay, and right now, Chrome, I have it set so these developer tools are looking at a Samsung device. Okay, so if I think I can, no, it's not going to change the device. So right now it's looking at a Samsung device. You can see that it's shrinking it down and using it on that Samsung device. So if I change it to landscape, I have more, I can see it a little better. But let's change it to an iPad. Okay, so now you can see, let's see if I can reduce this. There we go. Now it's running on an iPad in landscape mode without touching anything, and it just works. Oops, sorry, let's click back down in there. And it's simply running the same way. If I type in DEL and hit return, it comes up with a cross-reference. So there's nothing you have to do to get your application running on any device. The list is kind of sparse. I'm waiting for, I'd like Chrome to figure out, to get the latest phones on here, but we can use the iPhone 6 Plus, and this is the big one, so you can see it on here very easily. And so, like I said again, you don't have to change anything. You can run it on your device. If you have applications where you want your device, you need your device to be mobile, maybe to go out and check stock in a stock room, you could take your iPad without changing anything and access your data on your iPad without installing any software, just using your current browser and get all your information. You can even use the scanners and so forth with a little bit of programming. But you can do that very easily. And there's not much else to it. You just load it and go. Any questions about that? Oh, there is a question. How fast is it? Yeah, it's incredibly fast. You can see I'm running locally, but in a browser environment, there's two ways to connect. Normally, it's either a non-persistent environment, which is normal web-based applications, and then there's the persistent environment. Since Telnet is persistent, one character at a time has to go back and forth between the device and the host. But we have enabled the WebSockets on these devices, on the server. So WebSockets, it opens up a tunnel in a WebSocket, and your characters are instant. So it is incredibly fast. It's as fast as any other web page that you could possibly be on. Any other questions? Are there any browser requirements and plugins? No, Matt, like I said before, you don't install anything. There is zero client deployment on in this environment. There are no browser requirements. I would assume you would want to use the latest browsers, but there are no browser requirements. You can use any browser from Chrome, Opera, IE, Safari, Firefox, probably missing one or two, but any of those browsers will work. And like I said before, there are no plugins. You just run and go. It runs as a web page. Any other questions before we go to enhance? Okay, I'll keep looking, and just in case we have other questions. So, enhance. So this is the studio. It allows you to define your screens. So the screen that we were looking at was this super catalog. We defined each of these fields. So if I bring it up and look at the field maps, look at the default field map, you can see we defined all the fields simply by using a wizard. It goes through and defines all the fields. We then defined all the labels, so we know which field is linked to which label. And then we defined what we call islands. An island is a group of data. And within that island, you have a panel. So you can separate logical pieces of your data into islands and then panels within an island. Then we built the site. So what happens when you build the site is it creates a .NET environment and builds your .NET code for you. So you don't have to worry about it touching it, but once you develop your .NET, once you convert it to .NET, you can do anything in .NET at that point. So you can add on various items to your application, whether that's taking pictures or scanning items or whatever. At that point, you can then take any custom code that you've created and load it back into your project, into your viewer, And every time you recreate your .NET environment, it will take that custom code and recreate it. So you don't have to worry about losing any of your custom code if you have to rebuild your project or pieces of your project. So let's take a look and see what this looks like. So if I go back to my browser, okay, so remember we logged in before to the Telnet session. So I'm going to log in again to the Telnet session. I'm going to log in. So we built this login screen. So I'll log in. I might have to refresh it. Oh, no, there it goes. Okay, so it's calling up our catalog entry, which is this screen. Let me get out of this so I don't lock myself up. So I'm going to enter in one of the products. If I type in DEL and hit view, it will show the cross-reference of the items that match DEL. So I just select the one that I want, and it loads it into the screen. DEL is the product. It took it's got long description, short description, long description, a quote description, and actually the quote description comes from a secondary screen. So we put that quote description on the front screen, so we don't have to actually go to a simple screen, and I can show you that real quick. So if we go into one and DEL, and we'll select one, the ABC one, so we don't lock it up, and go into number 20 is the quote. You know what? So we'll do 20, and it'll go in and display this screen. Let's get out of this so you can see it better. Come on, there we go. So you can see it a little better. So it's bringing back this description. It happens to be on one screen because they couldn't fit it. So we took it from that one screen and put it into the front screen. So you can see you can manage many screens into one. You can just tab through each of the fields, make your changes as required. If you remember, unit had a question mark against it, so you can do a question mark and enter to bring up a list. So if I hit question mark, it brings up a list, the same list that was on the front screen, and I can make it bigger. Come on. Okay, for whatever reason, my mouse isn't being cooperative, so I'll just select feet, for instance, and it'll load it right back in. So you have text fields, you have data fields, you have dates. So I can use a calendar, let's say, and pull in a date. Let's pull in a different date. So let's go to today and put today's date in. Okay? Let's look at vendor. If I click on the gear here, it will look up those vendors. Let's exit out of there and refresh this. That's interesting. It always happens on a demo. Let's log out and we'll log back in. Only happens on the demo. I ran through this demo 10 times this morning. Let's go in. And let's go into vendor. There we go. Don't know what happened there. You can see it has one up top, so if we want to move, we could take one and move it down. So select the row to move and select where I want to insert it. Oops, let's try that again. I did one and one. So I want two, select one, and it moves it up. We can click on the vendor, and it'll show the next screen. So that's all our vendor information. And if I exit, it'll just scroll back. If I exit again. Okay, so we have dates, we have question marks. Web parent is another screen. It shows multiple lines of data, and each row of data is shown as a separate multi-value row. So there's 4 in each, and that's the way it's displayed. So we save and go back. Okay, so how is this really happening? Well, I'm going to bring up the administrator's window. Okay, and I'm going to just place it right over here. Now, this shows all of our sessions. I have 2 active. So the first active one, if I view it, this is my product screen coming from this screen. So anything I do here will be shown. Now, you don't want to run this in a live environment because it just takes time. It creates an audit trail and stuff. So you want to stay away from this unless you need to debug it. So I'm just going to close this out. Our second screen, our second active function, is showing our UI interface. So if I look at that, you'll see it's on short description. If I come back here and I change something, I'll click on vendor. Watch what happens in the background. It jumps to where the vendor information is, displays it, and then builds the screen based on the fields that are generated in the Telnet session. If I select one, you're going to see it follows me. If I exit, it goes back. If I exit again, it'll go back to the main screen. It's actually going back to the main screen and then to the short description screen because it needs to get that data so it can put it on the front form. Any questions about that? Once this form is generated, then we can start to evolve our application. So in the evolve, we say, okay, well, we can do a bunch of things, but one of them is creating a web service on the fly. There is a question. Is each user consuming a persistent Telnet license on Universe when using? Yes, it works the same as, it is a persistent connection, whether you're running as a GUI in the UI or running in the enable mode. They both take up a Telnet license. So if you run 2 sessions, you're taking up 2 licenses. Right now, I'm taking up 2 licenses on my server because I have the UI running, and I also have a Telnet session running back to the server. So yes, it is a persistent connection. Read-U locks work completely, so you don't need to worry about locking because it's handled on the server end, and not you don't have to worry about non-persistence. It's going to be there. Any other questions? Okay, so let's take a look. We were talking about the web services. So let's say you have a customer, and the customer wants to get at his data. You can do 2 things. You can create a portal for him to log in, display, and run an application, enter in the order number that he wants, and then log out. But they have no control over any of that data. They can't get that data and report on it, let's say. They can't integrate it with other screens in their own application. So if we use this screen to call a web service, so when the web service initializes, the user or the calling service will call to log on to the server and then send a request for a specific screen. That request will then prompt them for a product ID. So once the product ID is entered, then the data is sent back to the user, to the calling service. So if we look at that, This happens to be just an emulator that shows the effect of building a web service. So I'm going to go in and log on. So my log on is the same as it was in my Telnet session, and I'm going to log in. Come on, there we go. It's logged in. Now I'm going to tell it I want to get the product information. So when I get the product information, it's going to prompt me. So I'm sending a request to get product information. Then it's going to send back. It's going to expect a product ID. So I'm pumping in a product ID, and I'm calling the get product. So it then comes back with all of the data that is on that screen formatted. So this is actually formatted. If we want to look at it in raw JSON, the data can either be sent as raw JSON or XML, and that's just a flag that you set on your server. So if I look at the raw JSON, this is what's going back to the calling user, and then it disconnects. So it would log off at that point. I'm going to go back and I'm going to attach. I'm going to come back here. Now you see there are 3 sessions. I'm going to look at this session. So right now, it went and got all my data, and displayed my data. That's the data it gets for the formatted, for the JSON data sending back, or the XML data. So let's go back and we'll log off so you can see everything that's going on here. You'll see it's going to log off. It's going to kill that session. So I'm going to go back. Let's close that session. And now I'm going to log back on. Okay, now it's created, sorry about that. Now it created this session, so let's view it. So now it's sitting at the menu, because it doesn't know what you're going to request. So it's sitting at the menu. I'm going to say I'm going to get a product. And I'm going to say call get product. So now it goes in, it builds the report, it builds the data, sends the data back out. And that's basically it. It's creating the service for you. You don't have to worry about your creation. You don't have to worry about creating raw JSON data and getting your XML in the correct order. It will do it for you. You don't have to worry about any of that. It's all built into the application. One thing I failed to show, and let's jump, before I do that, are there any questions about building the service or how the service runs? Okay. I'm going to come back in and show you a piece of this. Because the application can run on any environment, on any tool set, device. If the screen is smaller, it will start adjusting the screen to get down to the screen version that you are looking at. So you can see I squeezed it down. So now everything, it pushes the islands and panels vertically. So it puts them on top, underneath each other. So it will work out of the box in a browser environment, in any device environment. If I go then and go to more tools and go into the developer tools, come on, there we go. Okay, so now it's working on an iPhone, and you can see there's a scroll bar. So let's change that to an iPad. Automatically changes the size, and you still have everything available to you. Let's go into the vendor. Let's pull in the vendor. Again, you have absolute control over this, and you don't have to do anything to get it there. Okay, I have a question from Steve. Does this work on Linux, or does it require Windows? It will work on the enable will work on any device. You know what? I'm going to bring in. I'm pretty sure it'll work on Linux also in a Tomcat environment. I think, I don't know if I can bring Andrew in on this to answer that question. Yes, I can. What is that? Keyboard. I'm trying to do that, and I don't. Oh, yeah, I can. Andrew, are you there? Andrew, I enabled your mouse, your mic. Are you there? Oh, you want Chris? Okay. Chris, are you there? Chris?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
can you hear me, my friend?
Yeah, I can hear you. So the question is, does it run on Linux?
Unfortunately, the FBTerm server does not run on Linux. No, it requires a Windows server to run on. But we'll run on any version of Windows all the way back to 2008, and you can even run this on Azure in the cloud if you want to. So this could be hosted on Azure even, or obviously if you've got your own data center, it can be hosted there or locally as you described earlier. But no, unfortunately, it does require a Windows server. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, it does require a Windows server on for the web services piece, but that's all it does. It doesn't need to load anything else but the web services piece. How does validation work? It works exactly the same as you're working now. I think part of the validation is, I'm trying to remember if we did this on this application. Yes, sell price. If I do ABC, yeah, okay. So it goes back to the server. Let's make this bigger. It goes back to the server, and it validates it. If it can't validate it, you get an error message. Is there anything else? Okay. Any other questions? So your validation is happening there, and it stays on the field. So 125. And then it goes away. Anything else, guys? There was a question to show the .NET code. I've had issues with this on my PC, so I'm not. I'm assuming that I can show it. I'm not 100% sure it will pop up. So yeah, it doesn't know what it is. So I was trying to avoid that. I tried it this morning. Well, it's trying to bring it up. So I don't know if it's actually going to succeed. But yeah. Any other questions? It wants to take its time there. We have screens that often truncate the data in order to fit enough columns. No, because it's going to show the columns that that are displayed on the form. There are ways to do that. We haven't done it on this screen, but there are ways to get the full data. You have to do some .NET programming to get that to work. But unfortunately, it's only going to show what is on the screen. You may be able to create other screens, but yeah, that's at this point, it's only going to show the this model can be generated as a service as a SaaS model. So you can run it on the cloud, or you can hire .NET programmers, or if you don't have in-house programmers, you can hire us or hire other people to take a look at it, but you don't need to have in-house people doing it. And like I said before, it doesn't take a multi-value developer to create the screens. There's no coding on the back end. All you're doing is tagging the fields, tagging the data, building your application, and going. If you need .NET help at some point because of your application or you want to add things, we can help you with that, and we can also help you get your application up and running. So all of the services that are built are changeable. So you see, it actually did bring it up. You can change the CSS, so you can make it look prettier. All your CSS is there. You can go into your applications and change any of your code. I'm not going to get into that. I'm afraid I'm going to blow it up at this point because it's not. I had a problem with it before, but you can see. Yeah, see, it's still giving me an issue. So this is the SuperCAD entry, and this is the data that was. This is the code, the .NET code that was created for the product, for that screen, and it's using validations. So it's going back and getting your validations on any of the fields, and it's working on a field and column basis. Anything else? So you can make the changes to this. You can then import those changes back into your studio, and then the studio, if it needs to be rebuilt, will take your custom code and rebuild it as necessary. Any other questions? Well, I thank you for your time. Tim, do you want to add anything before we jump out?
No, just if you want a more in-depth demonstration of this, of course, we will provide that to your company or to you individually. More than happy to do that. And but we'd like to thank you for joining us today.
Great, thank you very much. I have recorded this presentation, so I will put this either on YouTube and a connection directly from our website, or it will be be able to be streamed directly from the website. There was one question: can screens time out and free up any locks if users are inactive? It's going to work exactly the same way as it works now. It cannot free up your lock. You'll have, it's a telnet session, so if the telnet session times out, whatever happens to that lock is going to happen. So that's about it. Thank you very much for attending. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or call me. You can email me at rick.weiser, W-E-I-S-E-R, @onsystex.com. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate it. Have a great day.